What is up, guys? Random here with your Fantasy LCS Week 1 recap. This is the video where I'm going to break down every single game that happened in Week 1. I'm going to go over pick ban phase. I'm going to be going over each team's strategies and showing you guys why one team won when they were expected to lose, or just kind of explaining the nitty-gritty details behind each game. If there's certain games that you haven't seen that you don't want to get spoiled, I highly recommend you stop watching this video because I'm going to spoil the results for all the games for Week 1. So yeah, as far as my predictions for the Week 1, I was about 60% accurate. There definitely were some huge upsets, so let's get into it. So first game, Fnatic versus Origin. I predicted that Origin would actually win this game, and I was wrong. Fnatic actually ended up winning this game, and this game started off with the pick ban phase. It was a huge win for Fnatic in the pick ban phase. So the way that the pick ban phase worked out is they first picked the Poppy for Fnatic, and people were like, "Poppy? Why the hell are they picking Poppy?" And Poppy was a flex pick that could have gone either like jungle or support. And, Origin kind of didn't really respond to this. They kind of pick up the Lissandra, the Lee Sin, and then Origin picks up LeBlanc and Lucian, which, not a huge deal either way. But then in the third round of picks, Fnatic drops Olaf and Zac. And it's like, holy crap. And Origin, there's no response to Fnatic dropping Olaf and Zac. And I mean, I don't think that their last pick Orianna was necessarily bad, but it doesn't solve the problem. Like, it was over pretty much at that point. With that team comp, Fnatic just had a huge advantage. And it didn't help that, both Gamsu and Feverbin played amazing. That just kind of was like the final nail in the coffin. I do think that there were some things that Origin could have done a lot better to possibly pull out the win. The first big thing that I want to talk about, and I'm very hesitant to talk about this, is item builds. And I don't like talking about item builds because, item builds are based off of your knowledge of the game. And obviously LCS players have fantastic knowledge in the game. They're way more knowledgeable than I am, so I don't like to fault players on their item builds. I just felt like they didn't have the right mentality with this particular game, because they've got the Ezreal, they've got the Lissandra, and they've got the Orianna. And what they decided to do is they decided to go blue build Ezreal, Roa Lissandra, Roa Orianna. When you do that, you're pretty much guaranteeing that your entire team is not going to have any power until the 20-minute mark. And that's really easily countered, and that's exactly what Fnatic did. The game was pretty much over by the 20-minute mark. Once Lissandra, Orianna, and Ezreal started getting their power spikes, the game was over. There was no coming back from that. Fnatic had such a huge gold lead that it didn't matter how strong the Lissandra, the Orianna, the Ezreal got. So I feel like that was a huge misplay, a huge miscommunication. Only one or two of them should have gone those really scaling late power spike item builds. Having all three of them go those late power spike builds really kind of just completely destroyed any chance that Origin had winning. I also said that Mithy was going to be essential for this game, and he didn't impact the fights as much as Noxiac. Noxiac played great. And then kind of like really the last nail in the coffin was Origin went for a desperate Baron call. They didn't even bother sweeping the Baron pit. And yeah, they got completely destroyed at Baron pit, and Fnatic went on to win the game. So Fnatic definitely looks a lot better than I gave them credit for, and Origin, they really need to work on their shot calling, and they need to work on their pick ban phase a lot more. So we'll see what happens in Week 2. Moving on, next game was Elements versus G2. I said G2 was going to win this game, and they did, so I was correct. Yay me. So I feel like G2 definitely outplayed Elements in the pick phase. They got these two huge frontline tanks with the Tam Kench and the Trundle, and then they got the double 80 carry with the Graves and Lucian, and then they've got AP to round it out with the Ahri. The Ahri was a very good counter pick to the Ryze, I felt. And what G2 went for was a very interesting technique where they match up the lanes, so top went top and bottom went bottom, and then they just kind of held their own in top and bottom, and then they put all of their attention into mid lane with that Ahri versus Ryze matchup, and they just punished the Ryze, and they were able to drop the mid tower before they dropped either the bot or the top tower. And dropping that middle tower allowed G2 to pretty much have free reign in Element's jungle, which completely denied their jungler, and also allowed the Ahri and the Graves, who have superior mobility, to really kind of punish those side lanes. And then the side lanes fell, and then they just snowballed the game after that. They always seemed like they were one step ahead of Elements, and really, Elements didn't do enough to try and get back into the game. They had double teleport, and they did one teleport play earlier that failed, and yet they didn't do anything else with their teleports the rest of the game. And really, Gilius in jungle, he was just too reactive, and they just had very poor target focus. They were targeting the Tam Kench in pretty much every single fight. So yeah, that's really why Elements lost. G2 came in with a really great game plan, so I was definitely impressed by them. Next game, H2K versus Giants. I said that H2K would win this game, and they did, so I was correct. The pick phase, so they pick up the Ryze. Giants picks up the Ryze in the first round. And then the Ryze gets counterpicked by the Ahri in the third round by H2K. And Giants has the last pick, right? So they can choose to flex the Ryze to top lane, and then they can pick somebody who's favorable into Ahri. But instead, they say, nope, we're going to go Ryze mid lane, and we're going to pick Kennen top lane. And Kennen doesn't do anything for the team comp for Giants. I don't understand that Kennen pick, and it doesn't help them at all. They didn't have any wave clear. Both the Ryze and the Lucian are both very short-ranged. The only way the Lucian can really clear the wave is using his ultimate. They needed more wave clear. They needed somebody who was a long-range control mage, like a Victor or an Azir or something like that, that could clear the waves for them. And then on top of that, the lane swap completely denied the Kennen any farm and experience. And it also denied the Shen experience and farm, but the Shen doesn't need that much farm and experience. He's a tank. He doesn't need that much item scaling like the Kennen does. When the Kennen falls behind, he pretty much becomes useless. And H2K correctly identified that they had that advantage. They had the superior wave clear. They knew the Kennen was behind, so they just played very slow and smart. And then anytime Giants tried to engage, H2K would just narrow the path that the Giants could engage in by using the Trundle Pillar, and then they could just lay down this massive amount of damage with the Grave Q, the Grave Ult, the Ahri Q, the Ahri Charm, the Corki Phosphorus Bombs, the Corki Rockets. There was just all this damage just coming through a narrow channel. And Giants just had to walk through that in order to try and engage. And it just didn't work for them. They were just way too predictable in their movements. They didn't try any flanking maneuvers, and H2K had a pretty easy win against Giants. So H2K definitely proving that they're a top-rated team. Next game, Splice versus UOL Unicorns of Love. Yeah, the story of this game really was the junglers, right? Diamond Prox was absolutely huge in this game, and then Trashy just didn't have any impact. I think he got his first successful gank off around the 9-minute mark, and by that point, the game was pretty much over. But later in the game, we got into this 4-1 split push, where Unicorns of Love had Zed split pushing on their side, and Splice had the Ryze split pushing on their side. So obviously the Zed doesn't have teleport and the Ryze does. So Splice should have been looking to engage with the 4-man part of their team, because the Ryze can teleport in to make it a 5v4 and the Zed cannot. And that's how they could get the advantage. On the Unicorns of Love side, they want to put the pressure on the Zed. on with the Zed split pushing against the Rise, because they've got the Tam Kench who can bring someone with him with his ultimate and create a either a 2v1 or a 3v1 against the Rise. You could see that Unicorns of Love did a much better job punishing the Rise than Splice did punishing the 4 other members of Unicorn of Love. The other thing that really decided this game was Splice was continuously just blowing their cooldowns to either get like 1 kill, or they were blowing a lot of their cooldowns on tanks. Like you saw multiple times, like they tried to go after the Zed, and maybe they killed the Zed, but then they wound up giving up 3 or 4 kills when Unicorns of Love rotated because they blew all over their ultimates trying to kill the Zed. On the flip side, Unicorns of Love had great focus fire. They did a great job bursting down the people that they needed to burst down, and allowed Unicorns of Love to get the win pretty easily. Alright, so Vitality versus Roccat. This was definitely an upset. I picked Vitality to win, and Roccat went up winning the game. And it really was Rockat's shot calling that won them this game. They came up with this really cool team comp where they had the Corki and the Rise and Zac and Rek'Sai. Especially the Rek'Sai and the Corki with their ultimates in the package, they just had a lot of mobility. And they used this mobility to kind of do this really cool tower defense in the early part of the game. So usually when you see teams do lane swaps, they'll just trade objectives. So they'll trade their towers, and then they'll swap and they'll trade towers, and you'll see both the bot tower and top towers go down really fast. Roccat didn't do that. Roccat went and moved and defended the towers. And they caught this huge wave, so when 4 members of Vitality would push, Roccat would send 3 members to defend, and they would catch the wave, they would get all that gold, they would get all that experience. And Vitality wasn't expecting it, and they didn't react appropriately, and they wound up falling behind. Roccat ended up soaking up more gold and more experience than Vitality did, as a result of those tower defenses. And then once Roccat had an advantage with their superior mobility and their great use of using the Corki package, they were able to further accentuate their lead by getting a couple picks. So that really is what kind of sealed it in for Roccat. To make matters worse, Vitality put Lulu against Rise, and that's just a horrible idea, because the Lulu is not going to have any kill pressure on the Rise. She's not going to be able to deny the Rise at all. It pretty much just turns that mid lane into a farm lane, and that's exactly what the Rise wants, because the Rise is going to outscale the Lulu all the time. So they didn't put any pressure on Rise with Lulu. The Elise didn't put any pressure on Rise through ganking. And they didn't really play to their win conditions. If you look at Vitality's team comp, they were a 5-man team fight, protect the Tristana team. And they just didn't play to that. Roccat just ran circles around them and just used their superior mobility to push down multiple objectives and never allowed Vitality to group. So yeah, that was a great win for Roccat. It was really cool watching that game and watching how they defended their towers and how they used their superior mobility. Next game, Giants versus Unicorns of Love. This game was really cool. For the pick phase was awesome, because Unicorns of Love picks the Rise first pick, and it's a flex pick. So the Rise can go either top lane or mid, and they know they've got last pick, right? So they know they can flex the Rise. So Giants is forced to show their hand kind of in the third round, and they pick the Vel'Koz to kind of counter the Rise mid lane. Because usually Rise is bad against mages that have superior range and are kind of can control the battlefield. So what does Unicorns of Love do? They correctly shift the Rise to top lane, and they pick Zed into Vel'Koz. And that allows them to get huge advantages both in top lane and in mid lane, which really kind of puts them ahead right from the get-go, because the Rise is going to outscale the Shen. The Shen is not going to have any pressure on the Rise either. So it worked out really well for Unicorns of Love. Giants did a great job kind of playing around the Shen Globals, playing around the Kindred Ultimates, protecting the team. They did a really great job. They sent the Kindred up to stop the Zed split push. And Kindred was able to shut down the Zed because she has her ultimate to prevent the Zed all in. They did a really good job with that. But Unicorns of Love just had better rotations, crisper play. Anytime Giants got a kill or got an objective, Unicorns of Love would get 2 or 3 objectives or 2 or 3 towers. Just overall, they just had superior shot calling. They outplayed Giants in the pick phase, and that's what allowed Unicorns of Love to get the win. Next up, Elements versus Splice. So for this game, I said that Elements was going to win, and I was correct. So both of these teams were very sloppy in the early game. They just didn't look like top-ranked teams, which is what we would expect. Elements and Splice, they're kind of like those mid to lower tier teams. And they showed that. They showed that they're not at the same level as like an H2K or Unicorns of Love or Fnatic. But as the game went on, Elements kind of started firing on all cylinders. Gilius on Lee Sin started making some fantastic plays. They had really awesome team fighting. Like the team fighting from Elements was incredibly solid. Steve on Fiora did a fantastic job. And Splice just didn't do a very good job with the 1-3-1. They wound up having the Lissandra and the Zed split pushing, and they had Elise, Lucian, and Braum in the mid lane. And the Lucian just wasn't enough wave clear to avoid getting dove. So you saw that happening over and over again, where Lucian couldn't clear the waves, the wave would hit the tower, and then Elements would dive them. So I really think that Splice, they should not have done a 1-3-1. They should have done a 4-1. They should have moved probably the Lissandra would have been the best choice, because Lissandra has better wave clear than Zed. And keep the Zed in the side lanes, because most people can't solo out a Zed, and they should have just continuously done a 4-1 versus Elements. But yeah, yet again, this is another game where wave clear was a huge problem, was a huge reason why Elements won. Next game, Vitality versus Fnatic. I said Fnatic would win this game, and I was wrong. Vitality they played really well. The shot calling was fantastic, and it was just little things, like little tiny advantages that they turned into huge advantages. Like for example, the Fiora, when they did the lane swaps, Fiora got a slight EXP advantage over the Olaf. This allowed her to reach level 6 before the Olaf did, and the Elise was there. As soon as Fiora turned level 6, they all-in the Olaf, who was only level 5, didn't have his ultimate yet. They were able to pick up the kill, which allowed the Fiora to completely snowball the lane out of control. Because now she had a dominant lead as far as experience is concerned, gold is concerned, got the first blood. And yeah, she just completely snowballed that lane. The Olaf was completely taken out of the picture. On top of that, the Morgana plus the Misfortune, basically what that translated into was that Morgana can Black Shield the Misfortune, and there's no way to stop the Misfortune ultimate at that point. And then combine that with, Morgana hitting her bindings very often, because Singh did a very good job hitting all of his bindings, and then Misfortune can lay down the Make It Rain, and Morgana can lay down the Tormented Soil, and you get lots of procs on the Thunderlord's Decree, and the Lucian Poppy, they just couldn't compete with that. They just couldn't find a solution to dealing with that Misfortune Morgana combo, and that allowed Vitality to pick up 2 towers pretty quickly. They didn't get that many kills, but they got the tower advantage, and then that allowed them to kind of snowball the game further. On top of that, I really feel like the LeBlanc pick was not smart into the Rise. If a team picks the Rise, you got to pick a control mage. You got to pick somebody who can just punish that Rise, who's got wave clear, who can force Rise under tower, force him to wave clear under tower, and really kind of just punish him so he can't scale up as quickly as he would want to. LeBlanc didn't do that, unfortunately. And because they picked the LeBlanc and the Olaf, they didn't have any wave clear. Yet again, we're in this situation where you've got Aleutian trying to wave clear against a Misfortune, a Rise, a Fiora, Morgana. There's all this CC that's coming out from Vitality. They've got the Elise, Cocoon, they've got the Rise lockdown, the point and click lockdown, they've got the Morgana binding, they've got the Misfortune make it rain. There's just so much chain CC that can happen, so that if anyone from Fnatic comes forward to try and clear the wave, they can be instantly CC'd and killed before their team can even react. So great game by Vitality. Yeah, they just outsmarted Fnatic. Fnatic looked a little bit flat, and Vitality just really punished them. I was really impressed. Next game, H2K versus Origin. This really was just H2K just outplayed Origin. There's no other way to put it. The lane swap, Soez fell behind. H2K was just more calm in the chaos. They would push up. Origin would try to engage. H2K would retreat and then re-engage when Origin overchased and would wind up winning the trades, right? So H2K was just very patient, very collected, very good shot calling, very good re-engage. And a lot of that really had to do with the fact that Origin didn't have a lot of wave clear. Yet again, we're seeing the Lucian, the Kassadin, the Rise, all of these people are very short wave clear. And H2K just could just keep pushing the waves in the tower, and whenever somebody stepped forward to try and wave clear, they could harass them with the Corki, or the LeBlanc could distortion in and get some harass off, or Lysandre can get harass off. And then when Origin tried to retaliate, H2K would back up until they got into a favorable position. So H2K definitely outplayed Origin that one, definitely better shot calling. And yet again, we're seeing lack of wave clear is a huge problem for these teams. Next game, G2 versus Rocket. I picked that G2 would win, and I was correct. So, as far as the game was concerned, Trick on Lee Sin was awesome. He was just freaking awesome. He was everywhere. He was kicking Kindred out of her ultimate. He was doing all sorts of cool plays. Emperor was dominating on Callista. But that said, like, Rocket was in this game. Like, they made some great use of teleports. Yet again, we see this Lulu versus Rise matchup. And Rocket was hanging in there, but they were definitely losing. And then G2 made a huge mistake. They got way too greedy, trying to get the top inhibitor, and they wound up losing 3 or 4 of their team. Yeah, I think they lost 3 of their team. The only people that were still up were Tam Kench and Callista. And Rocket's response was, "We're going for Baron." And so pretty much G2 gave up the game. Rocket probably could have won. And then Rocket goes for Baron, and G2 has a phenomenal play. Rocket played it horribly. They just ended up just focusing the Tam Kench, and Emperor was just hopping around everybody and ended up getting like a triple or a quadra kill. And Rocket completely just lost the game after that point. So you saw these two teams. Both these teams are kind of new, inexperienced. They're not considered top-tier teams. You see a huge mistake from G2 that if it had been like a top-tier team, G2 would have lost at that point. But instead they went up against Rocket, which is also kind of middle-tier team, and then Rocket makes a mistake, and then G2 capitalizes on it, and then just is able to win the game. So G2 looks good, but they're still making mistakes, so definitely need to look at that when they go up against stiffer competition later in the season. Alright, moving on to NA. The first game for NA, TSM versus CLG. Oh my goodness, this was a phenomenal game. I think this was my game of the week. It was fantastic. And if you look at what I said in the preview for this week, I said this game is all about shutting down Darshan. It's all about CLG being able to get gold on Darshan and whether or not TSM can shut Darshan down. And what do you see from TSM? They ban out Fiora, Olaf, Gangplank. 3 top lane carries. They're clearly focusing. They want to make sure that Darshan cannot get a carry where he can snowball the game. And what do they wind up doing? CLG winds up picking Jax for Darshan. So he gets a late game hyper carry in Jax. So TSM played this really well. They wanted to go for the lane swap. They tried to get vision, but they misplayed it. CLG outplayed them as far as the lane swap game, and Hanser fell behind. This allowed Darshan to get early. It allowed him to become this like complete nightmare of a split push threat that TSM really could not deal with. They picked the Mundo just because they knew that it was going to be an issue. They wanted somebody tanky up there to just kind of just like hold off Darshan while the rest of the team, rest of TSM won. But even the Mundo could not stand up to how powerful Jax got. And then on top of that, CLG just had some phenomenal shot calling and team fights. Really great rotations and plays, and really, the story of the game was Darshan on Jax going 3-3 and 12. Did fantastic despite TSM's best efforts to try and shut him down. But this was kind of expected, at least from my perspective, because TSM usually has a very weak week 1. So I would look to see TSM bounce back pretty strong in week 2. But yeah, definitely watch this game if you haven't already. It's fantastic. All right, so Cloud9 versus Immortals. So Cloud9 decided to go Bunny Fufu again in this game, and it didn't work out well for them. Immortals definitely had superior shot calling. They got balls on the rise, and they just countered, like Huni just counterpicked him with Cho'Gath and just ran circles around him. Balls was just completely ineffective. Rush just was way too far behind. They got a good lane swap, but from that point it was all Immortals. And really, I definitely blame Cloud9 a little bit in the pick phase. I really think that the misfortune was not the right call. I mean, if you look at how the pick phase went, they picked the misfortune when they already knew that Immortals had a Rek'Sai, a Twisted Fate, and a Janna. That's so many ways to interrupt the misfortune ultimate. Yeah, they got the Braum away, so that way the Immortals couldn't pick the Braum to block the Misfortune ultimate, but they didn't think about the other ways that Misfortune could be completely negated, because her ultimate is just so powerful. So I definitely think Misfortune was a mispick. They should have gone for something else, maybe like a Tristana or something like that. I mean, because they already had the Rise and the Echo, so they couldn't really go they couldn't really go Corki or Ezreal or something like that. They needed to go somebody who was a hard AD carry, but I don't think Misfortune was the right call in that game. Alright, Dignitas versus NRG. Wow. GBM, I think he possibly had the best first game that anyone's ever had in the LCS. He just had amazing gravity fields. Like in every team fight, just perfectly placed gravity fields that completely swung the team fight in his team's favor. He was running Dignitas all over the map. They weren't able to stop him. And then he got two Baron steals with Victor. It was phenomenal. He played amazing. I mean, Dignitas was in control of this game. They had good wave control, good team fighting. They were winning the game. They went for Baron twice, and NRG stole the Baron twice. GBM just put his entire team on his back and carried them to victory. So GBM did an amazing job. I definitely would just watch that game just for the highlights of it. But yeah, I can't say enough about GBM. He just did a fantastic job. You can see I summarized it right there as far as my notes for NRG. What the fuck, GBM? Really? I mean, 2 Baron steals in your first game. So, fantastic job. NRG definitely earned the win. Alright, Renegades versus Team Liquid. Holy crap. This was a 61-minute game. 61 minutes. Um, Renegades, I think they got everything they wanted out of the pick phase. They got set up really great. Um, they got Freeze on Callista, that's like his best AD carry. They got Remy on Alistar, which is also just fantastic. And then Crumbs just had a better impact early in the game than I Will Dominate. He was able to get some kills onto Callista, and Freeze was able to start really kind of dominating the game. I feel like Piglet did really well. I felt like Lorlo had some great ultimates with his Gnar, but there was shot calling errors, which is why I think you saw the substitutions. They subbed out Smoothie and I Will Dominate in the next game. But yeah, we got there was one Baron fight where Renegades got the inhib because of poor shot calling on Team Liquid. At the second Baron, Lorlo got an amazing 3-man ultimate into the Victor ultimate. I Will Dominate Smite stole Crumbs and Freeze for the 5th Dragon. And then Crumbs Smite steals Baron at 50 minutes to pretty much seal the game for Renegades. So it was just completely back and forth. Really amazing game. 61 minutes, like I said before. Yeah, I think Renegades, they earned the win. I definitely think, I definitely wanted Team Liquid to win. They were the team that I picked. But Renegades, they earned it. And Team Liquid definitely made some mistakes in the game. Alright, Echo Fox versus Impulse. I don't know what to say about Impulse. They're like in free fall right now. I mean, they were gonna have Gate as support. Now he's at mid lane. They just looked sloppy. They didn't look like they were a team. They looked like they were just kind of solo queue people put together. And when you're going up against a coordinated team like Echo Fox, you're gonna get smashed, and that's exactly what happened. Yeah, I think that Impulse is going to be really hard pressed to win a game this year. There needs to be some changes. They need to get a solid roster. They need to solidify their positions. They need to solidify their shot calling if they're going to win the game. Echo Fox just had better rotations, better team fighting. Froggen did fantastic, as to be expected. And yeah, pretty easy win for Echo Fox. Next game, Renegades versus NRG. So this was really cool, kind of seeing the two junglers. Crumbs definitely had the advantage. He got the first blood. He got a lot of gold onto Lucian, onto Freeze. But it wasn't enough to deal with Impact on Fiora. Impact didn't play in the first game for NRG, and then he came back, and oh my god, he was amazing. Did some amazing outplays. Even when it was a 2v1, he still won, or he still got a kill. They had some great turret trades and great focus fire. NRG definitely just showed some fantastic shot calling, and the real kind of mistake that Renegades made is that they could not protect Freeze. They devoted all this gold, all this time onto Freeze, and then when it came to the actual team fights, they just couldn't protect him, and that's why Renegades lost. Next game, Dignitas versus CLG. This was definitely an upset. I thought CLG was going to win this. But Dignitas, oh my god, their shot calling was phenomenal. CLG had better communication early, but as the game went on, Dignitas was just, they were on point. And really kind of the story of this was they punished Darshan. Like I said it, before last week when I was talking about week 1, I said if you want to beat CLG, you gotta punish Darshan. Darshan is their carry. It's one of the only teams where their top laner is their primary carry. You have to punish Darshan, and that's exactly what Dignitas did. And then Dignitas just did fantastic. Just they would disengage until they got to a favorable position, and they would re-engage, and they were able to pick up some great kills. They definitely had superior trading of objectives, and they just came in with a great game plan. They did a really great job just shutting down Darshan and forcing Huhi and Stixay to carry, and unfortunately they were not able to carry, and that's why Dignitas got the win. Alright, TSM versus Team Liquid. Oh man, this game heartbroke me because Team Liquid played really well. They made substitutions. They substituted in Dardosh and Matt for jungle and support, and you saw a lot better shot calling. They did a really good job punishing double lift. They did some really great team fighting. They were ahead the entire game, and then they make one mistake. They lose one team fight, and TSM wins the game off a single team fight. It was absolutely heartbreaking to see Team Liquid lose this game. I definitely think that, Team Liquid was definitely in control the entire game, and it just shows you one mistake on these patches in this season can be the difference between victory and defeat. So yeah, good job for TSM to close out the game, to really punish that one mistake and realize we can win if we push right now. But yeah, I definitely felt bad for Team Liquid. They played a very great game, except for that one mistake, and they wound up getting punished for it, and they wound up going 0-2 this week, which is pretty sad. Next game, Echo Fox versus Cloud9. This was what was a really cool game to watch. The real story of this game was the junglers. Rush had amazing pressure in the early game, and Hard on his Rek'Sai had no impact. Really, Echo Fox they were just always reactive. They were just poor focus fire, and subbing in High for Bunny Fufu at support was a fantastic decision. You could see the shot calling was just so much crisper, so much cleaner. Just great trading. They were always doing these great 5-man dives, and they were getting away with it just because they were just juggling turret aggro fantastic. High is just a masterful shot caller. I mean, I think he's probably the best in the LCS at shot calling. And then the other thing that I really enjoyed about this game were some of the comments that the commentators had. Some of them that were really hilarious that I thought was in reference to KFO versus Balls. Balls was winning early on because he got some help from Rush. And, of course, the commentators had to say that Korean Challenger is less than NA Diamond 2 because KFO is a Korean Challenger level player and Balls was at Diamond 2 recently. They also made comments that High is never going to get to retire. And High just freaking loves tower diving on that Alistar with that ultimate. And I think my favorite comment of the entire game is that High is a honey badger when it comes to turrets because he does not give a fuck. Especially on Alistar. Just constant tower diving, really great plays all around. Cloud9 absolutely deserved that win. The shot calling was fantastic. I hope that Bunny Fufu can get better at shot calling to the point where they're not so reliant on High at support. Because I think that Bunny Fufu is a better support than High, but High is just a way better shot caller than Bunny Fufu. Alright, so last game of the week was Immortals versus Impulse, and this was an absolute stomp. I mean, I don't really know what to say on the Impulse side. Immortals went 16-0. It was a perfect game. They got victory in 18 minutes, 15 seconds. It was the fastest game in NA LCS history. They absolutely destroyed Impulse. It wasn't even funny. Immortals, they looked so strong. It's going to be really hard to beat them. Yes, Impulse is probably the worst team in NA LCS. But Immortals is just, they're ruthless. They really are. So I'm really interested to see what's going to happen in Week 2 because Immortals has a pretty difficult week in Week 2. Alright, so what are my conclusions after this first week? It's Difficult to draw conclusions this early in the season, but this is what I'm going out on a limb. This is what I'm going to say are the conclusions from the first week. Teams are really undervaluing wave clear. If you look at a lot of the upsets or games that were really close, a lot of the times the team that won was the team that had superior wave clear. If you don't have wave clear and you fall behind, you're just completely screwed. So I think that both in the NA and EU LCS, these LCS teams are really undervaluing wave clear, and they need to start looking at their team comps and making sure that they have enough wave clear so that they have a chance if they fall behind, or if the enemy team gets a pick and starts pushing. You got to have that wave clear to stop the push. And the other thing that seemed really apparent was that pick ban phase and then like the first 5 minutes of the game are so important. Like so many times in these games, the counter pick or the first blood or just a team doing slightly better in the lane swap is what that was the difference. That was the difference between victory and defeat. Was just little tiny advantages that these teams get in the first couple minutes of the game or with a favorable matchup. So I really keep an eye on that. Like I know a lot of people just fast forward through pick ban phase, but it's so important this season. It's just mind games completely, and it's just really interesting to watch how these coaches are thinking, and it has a huge impact in the game. So definitely pay attention with the pick ban phase. And really, the early game, that's all junglers. Like junglers are the key player for the first 5 minutes of the game. So a lot of these teams, their junglers got to step up in the first 5 minutes. They've got to create pressure. They've got to create opportunities and openings if their team's going to be successful. So look for pick ban phase being super important, and jungler first 5 minutes. Whichever jungler is more dominant in the first 5 minutes is going to really set their team up for success. As far as who I think the best teams are in both NA and EU, I break it up into 5 tiers. So the first tier is what I think the top team for each region is. I think Immortals is top in NA, H2K is top in EU. My second tier are like what I say the second, third, and fourth place teams are. Like the people who are going to be vying for the title and also probably going to go really far in the playoffs. So right now I think it's NRG, CLG, and TSM for NA. And then for EU, I think it's Fnatic, Unicorns of Love, and Vitality. Third tier are the teams that I think are going to be fighting for those wildcard playoff spots, but are also kind of on the bubble. If they don't continue to improve, they could fall into possibly getting relegated or falling into that relegation tournament. And for third tier, I think it's Dignitas and Cloud9 for NA, and I think it's G2 and Origin for EU. Fourth tier, these are the teams that are really going to be scrapping and fighting for their lives, fighting to get those wildcard spots, fighting to avoid going into that relegation tournament. And for that fourth tier, right now I've got Renegades, and people are going to be upset, but I got Team Liquid down there. Echo Fox is the third team for NA, and then for EU, I've got Giants, Elements, and Rockcat. And then my fifth tier team, these are the teams that are just fighting not to get relegated. These are the bottom tier teams in my opinion, and that's going to be Team Impulse and Splice. So those teams, they need to show something in the next couple of weeks, or they're going to be in a huge amount of trouble. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you like the content on the channel, please subscribe. I will be doing one of these videos every week for my predictions for the coming week, and also kind of my analysis of the previous week. So yeah, if you guys have a comment, if you disagree with anything that I said in this video, leave a comment, or if you agree with it. I love having discussions and debates with people about this stuff. I'm always trying to learn new things. So definitely leave a comment. I'll definitely try to do my best to get back to you guys. But I hope you have a great day. This is Randomonium signing off.